In this tutorial, I'll show you how to create my letter U animation for this year's 36 Days of Type. I did do it previously for my letter D, but quite a few people asked me how it was done, so I thought it was worth redoing and then sharing that knowledge with you guys. We'll be setting this up in a way in which you can easily update it to any other letter or number or even a logo. Let me know in the comments below if there are any other tutorials you'd like to see, and please remember to like and subscribe and you'll get notifications when I upload new videos. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start off by bringing in a MoText object. I'm going to make that the letter U, and then I'm going to pick a font. I've been using this Big John font, and I'll put a link in the description below if you want to download that. I'm going to make it a depth of 40, it's a little bit wider. I'm going to leave it at the default height of 200 and the default position set to 0 here. Okay, now what I'm going to do next is just group that, and then I'm going to call that instance master. What this is for is we're going to make an instance object so that when we finally create our slices and our animation, we'll be able to just change this one MoText object and it'll update all of the slices, and you know, we can make it any other letter or a different shape. So we're going to make another group of that, and we're going to call that letter, and then I'm going to, this instance master, we're going to click on this icon here, and that makes an instance of that, and then I'm going to hide the top level. So the reason I've done this second layer is if I hide this level, see, it hides the instance as well, because that's doing whatever that wants to do. So let's just hide that. And then we've got our letter there, our instanced object. Let's just leave that. Okay, so now the next thing to do is bring in one of our slices. So let's bring in a cube, and we'll go to the front view. And we're going to change some of the sizes here. So I'm going to change this to about the settings I use. I've got this to about 38. The Y, I'm going to make that 300. And then the Z size, I'm going to I'll make that 100. Okay, and then I'm going to rotate this to something like -50. So this is our start position of our first slice. We'll actually name that slice 1 so we can keep track of what we're doing. Okay, and then we're going to animate this across the length of the U. This would be a good time to set up the actual project settings, so let's go to there. We're going to make this 25 frames per second, and for the moment we're going to make this 125 frames. Now I'm going to make the final animation 4 seconds, but the way we're going to do this, we kind of need some extra frames to begin with, and then we're going to chop it down. Okay, so just so because the most important thing is creating this loop. So let's get our slice, and on frame 0 I'm going to go to the coordinates, and then on the X and Y I'm going to set a keyframe and go to frame 125, and I'm going to set the X to 150 and the Y to 180. So then we have this animation running across here. Now obviously we've got easing in and easing out, so if we go to the timeline we can select that object and make those frames linear. So now we've just got that linear motion running across the letter. So what you see we've got down here is we've got with those keyframes selected from the timeline. So let me just go back to that. So with these keyframes selected, you see we have these options for before and after, and that's basically what happens after this keyframe, what happens before. So at the moment it would come to a stop, but if what we're going to do is change it to continue on both, which will basically mean it will continue the movement it's currently on, and before the first frame it will do the motion up until that point. So let me just show, if I go to the timeline, so see before that keyframe it just carries on, whilst before it would have just stopped before that keyframe, but it's going to carry on before that frame, and it's going to continue afterwards as well, and that will come in useful when because we're going to create duplicates of this. Okay, so that's our first slice done. Now what we're going to do next is actually make duplicates of this. So let's create, we want to create 5 in total, and then name those appropriately so we can keep track of what we're doing. Oh, 3, 4 and 5. Okay, now let's go back into the front view, and then we'll put garage shading on for the display. And next thing I'm going to do is just create 5 new materials. We're going to do Octane materials later, but this is just a guide for while we're animating. So I'm just going to do 5 random colors. I'll just leave that white. Okay, so let's just pick one for each. This is just so we can see what we're doing. Then I'm going to bring up the timeline. Now what we're going to do is offset each of these by about 20 frames. So I'm going to take this one to frame 20. Then we're going to go to frame 40. Let's find it. Frame 60. And frame 80. Okay. So now we have our group of stripes moving across the U. So now the next thing we want to do is have that initial animation. We want to duplicate these stripes and fill them in so that they're covering this part of the animation, and then we want to make sure that we create a loop. Okay, so we can do that by picking all our stripes, duplicating them, and then if we go to the timeline with our second set selected, so slice 1.1 to 5.1, we're going to offset those so they fill in that initial part of the animation. Let's go to frame 0. The initial part of the animation, so we want that red one to be buttoning up with the white, and that should be so that the end of slice 1.1 see is actually on frame 25. So this is just getting all the maths to work so that everything loops correctly. And we can see if it's looping correctly by going to frame 0. We'll go to frame 100, and we can see that we haven't moved position on that blue stripe there. So each of our stripes is going to loop correctly. So now at this point, we can go to our project settings, and I'm going to make this just 100 frames long. And we'll be able to see that it's kind of difficult to see because you've got all of them disappearing at the top or appearing at the bottom, but if we kind of zoom right in, you can see we've got this looping stripe animation now. So we're kind of halfway there. We've got the basis on which we can use the volume mesher and builder to create our stripes. So let's pull back out again. Now I'm going to delete these because you'll see it become a laborious task to have to redo these, but we know it works. So I'm going to get rid of these for the moment. So let's go back to frame 1. I'm going to save this as I haven't actually saved it yet. I'm living dangerously. Oh, I spelled that incorrectly, but we'll live with it. Okay, so what we're going to do is bring in our volume builder, volume mesher. I'm going to put the builder in the mesher, and then we're going to put slice 1 in the builder and our instance master in that builder as well. Now if we select that volume builder, what we want to actually do is have the instance master at the bottom, and then the slice, we're going to make that an intersection between the master and the slice. So there you can see that intersecting there. And now we'll make this voxel size of something like 1, and then we'll add in a smooth layer, and that's our setup. And we'll call this volume mesher 1, and then we're going to duplicate the whole thing, call this 2, and then we're just going to swap out that slice for slice 2 in the volume builder. When you drag it in, you see the order slightly goes, so let's just reorder, make sure that's set to intersect. We'll duplicate that, we'll call this 3. Okay, and then we'll replace that slice again, reorder these, change that to intersect, duplicate this, 4. So this is what I was saying, we're going to just duplicate all of these rather than do this 10 times, we're just having to do it 5 times. So let's just change all these to intersect. 5. swap this out and make that intersect. Okay, so obviously we're not seeing the whole animation because we haven't got those ones at the beginning, but you can see there we've got our animation of our slicing through our U shape. Okay, and then we can duplicate all of these. So we've got our point ones now. Go to our timeline, select those. We know where we want them offset. We want it so this top one is at frame 25, and that should give us our perfect loop. So let's just check that that is definitely on frame 25. Yeah, sorry, it's going a bit slow because it's chugging away. It's having all of these to do. So let's just check on frame 100 and see what that looks like. And then frame 1, it looks exactly the same. So when we render this out, we'll probably just render from frame 0 to frame 99, and then it'll go back to 0 again. That'll be our next frame. Just quickly before we go into the Octane renderer and look at setting all of this up in Octane, I just want to show you the benefit of using that instance for the motex for the letter. So now we could just update this to another letter, and that will update all of those instances. So, you know, we've got a pre-made animation. If you were doing 36 days of type and you wanted them all to be the same, then, you know, this is, you could use this multiple times basically. Now, you might run into a problem where, for instance, you do this Z, and you might find, let's have a look at frame 100. So we want to make sure this loops. See, there's a bit missing there. And we go to frame 0, we can see a bit. That's because on the end frame our set is offset too much and we're not catching that final piece. So this is why I put the motex object within a folder, so we can actually grab that motex. The instance is copying this folder, so we can actually move this object within the instance, and then it will update everywhere. So now just moved it along a bit so it catches that corner. Now if we go to the first and last frame, you see they're the same. So you can use this technique to update quite easily on the fly, and obviously this could be a letter, it could be a shape, it could be whatever, I guess, but it means it's a bit more parametric and you can actually update it on the fly. With that being said, I'm going to put this back to being a U, and I'm going to reset my position, scale and rotation. Okay, let's start off by opening the Octane Live Viewer and drag that over. I'm going to set up this render for my daily render kind of render setup. I'm just going to change this to 1000 by 1250. I want this to be 25 frames per second, and then all frames. Actually, no, we're going to just render. We only need from 0 to 99 because 100 and 0 are actually the same, so we don't want to render that twice. So that's all we need for our render settings. And then I've got this previous file open, which is the A that I did in a previous tutorial. Now, because I'm doing each of my daily renders for 36 days of type, I want them to all kind of look like a set. So I'm using the same camera and the same background for each of them, but just changing the color. So from this scene, and you could do the same if you did the previous tutorial, I'm just going to grab the camera, the sky object, and just to remind you, or if you didn't see the previous tutorial, we've just got a HDRI sky object of this studio, Car Studio 2 that I got from the Pixel Lab. I'm going to grab both of those, and we'll grab the lights, and we've got two lights with targets on them, aiming at a target in the center of the stage basically. So they're pretty straightforward, not very bright, just to give us that kind of rim light on either side of the letters. So let's grab all of those bits and the studio, we'll cut that, bring that into our current letter, and if we look through the camera, we can see the rough setup. Now I guess the other one was more centered, but we've got the correct angle, so let's just bring this into the center of the stage, and now we know that this is kind of gonna look the same as all the others, or at least be in the same sort of perspective. Let's press the render button and see what that's looking like currently. Just realised actually we want this to be path tracing, not direct lighting. And then I'll put the lock on here. and I'll change this to like 0.6. It's just so we can scale and see this actual size of the render, and we can kind of move that around. I think that needs to move a tiny bit that way. Okay, so what I want to do is probably make the background kind of red like I did in the previous version of this. So I'm going to go into here, change this to something, I think it was something like this. There you go, and that's going to be our red background. So that's going to be the basis that we're going to start from. Just going to have a look at that again. Actually, I'm going to make this a diffuse material, I think. Yeah, I'll actually call that stage. That makes more sense. And these materials that we added on earlier, we don't need those anymore. So let's just delete those. And now we can create some actual Octane materials to go on here. So I'm just going to change a couple of settings actually. I'm just going to put my samples down to say like 500 for now. 10, the GI clamp, I'm going to make that 1. I'm going to put adaptive sampling on. So this just kind of speeds up our rendering. And then we'll use the AI denoiser to clean everything up. And you can see my other tutorial where I talk about that. So let's start off by making the glass. So we'll make a specular material. Okay, and we'll call this glass. And I'm going to add this onto the object. So obviously we want it to be on both number 1s. Okay, so that when it loops around, it all matches, all our colors match up. So in the glass, if we go into medium, we're going to add a scattering medium, and this is where we're going to add in our color. I'm going to make the density something like 10, and then the absorption, so the color, I'm going to bring in an RGB spectrum, and then change the color of this. So we're going to make this kind of like a light blue, I think. Okay, and then I think for the roughness, what I did was actually brought in a grunge map. So let's again go down to the Octane, and we will bring in an image texture. And I've got a few image textures here. I've got this grunge map here downloaded online, so I'm just going to bring that in. So you see that's added roughness, too much roughness. So what I'm going to do is just invert that. So I just want to kind of show like a rough sort of like amount coming through. I'm actually going to change the projection on these. I'm going to change that to cubic. And I'm going to go to a frame where we can see more of the glass. Okay, like that will do. And I think what I'll do is take the power down. We've got like, we're just showing just enough, so we've got like a bit of roughness on there. Actually, I might even make it less than that. Make it 0.5, 1.5. No, I've actually 0.3. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to stick with that. So I'm kind of happy with that for the glass for the moment. So let's just create the other colors that we need. So we go to materials, Octane glossy, and this first one is going to be a yellow color. So I'm going to drag this in again to 2 and 2. And then in the diffuse channel, I've already kind of set up my colors that I want. So I'm going to change this to 44, 81, and 88. And that's our color. So I'll set up the colors first, and then we'll go back and just add in some roughness to each, to kind of make them all, look a bit more interesting. So that's our yellow. I'm going to duplicate that, and this is going to be our purple. So I'll call this purple. And then the colors for that I've got are 264, 81, and 83. So not too far off on those two. I'm going to make sure that's both on number 3 and number 3. Okay, and then next we've got the green, and that one is 163 by 81 by 83. So I mean, obviously this is where you can have a play, do whatever colors you want. This is just what I've done on my setup. And then the last one is the light blue. Okay, and that one is 199 by 66 by 89. Okay. And we'll put that onto both of those objects. So that's kind of my final setup that I'm happy with for the colour. I'm actually thinking this glass I might do a little bit. I'm not 100% happy with this roughness, so I'm just going to have a play with this. I'm wondering whether that's not going to. Oh, yeah. What I might do is just put this onto something like 0.1 and then put a mix. So it kind of brings some of that in. I'm not kind of happy with how dark that is. So I'm wondering whether I could change the density. Well, that's too much. Bear with me. This is how I spend most of my time when I'm setting up my renders, my daily renders, is trying to get the material combinations to something that I like. I think that works better. Yes, I'm happy with that. Okay, right, so that's that for the glass. And then for these materials, I'm going to add some roughness in those as well. I'm going to make sure that everything is cubic, because what I want to do is have it so the materials shouldn't be moving, it's just the slices are moving through the materials. If we go into the roughness channel for the yellow, I'm going to add in an image texture, and then I'll grab, these are a few that I like using, bring one in. Yeah, I'm going to leave that like that actually, and then I'm going to bring down the power. Yeah, so I've got something like that, so it's something subtle. So as we move through this, as it animates, it should pick up little highlights, which is going to look nice in our final render. Okay, let's go to our other materials. Go to the purple. Again, I'm going to bring in an image texture and pick this one up. So it just kind of breaks that up a little bit. I'm wondering whether the green, I might just actually just add a little bit of roughness in, like overall roughness. Let's go. And then we'll see what that looks like. Okay, I don't know, that doesn't look particularly that great, that purple, so let's just have a look here. I think that this roughness texture is too big, so let's go into the node editor, and then I'm gonna do a UV transform, and I'm just gonna make that like a smaller, yeah, there you go. So you can see we're picking up a little bit of that roughness now. It's not as kind of blurry and weird as it was before. And that light blue, our final one, gonna go to image texture. Then I think maybe I'll use this light scratches. See what that looks like. I think as we had the same problem with the other one, I'm wondering whether, no, I think this one looks alright actually, the size. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so there we go, that's our final setup, and we can see that it's animating in and out. We've got our loop, we've got all our materials on our colors, and now we can just set it up for render. And like I said before, you know, we could just change this to a different letter, and then that's going to update everything for us on the fly, which is pretty cool. You could put in a shape or a logo or anything like that, I guess. And you know, I hope you found this useful and you can have a play. And that just about wraps this up. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please check out some of the other tutorials. And if there's anything you're interested in that I've done previously on my Instagram account that you'd like more information on, please let me know in the comments below. I'll see you on the next tutorial. Please stay safe. Bye.